Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is gearing up to hit theaters globally, and thanks to Disney I had a chance to check this one out early. As a huge fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and a staunch defender of their last phase of films and television series, I didn't love this one. Here are my thoughts. In the film, which officially kicks off Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, superhero partners Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne return to continue their adventures as Ant-Man and the Wasp. Together with Hope's parents, Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, the family finds themselves exploring the quantum realm and embarking on an adventure that will push them beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. Alright, so we not only have the latest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the very first installment in the franchise's 5th phase. Now, the 4th phase was fairly divisive amongst fans and cinema goers. There are all sorts of complaints and I guess criticisms, like genuine criticisms of the direction this franchise is going post Infinity Saga, post Iron Man, Captain America, all that kind of stuff. Phase 4 didn't really have a kind of clear narrative path. It was really all about opening new avenues, new characters, new ideas that could be explored in future movies. I was a staunch defender of it. I thought a lot of the movies, a lot of the series were really great. I thought there was a lot of really mediocre stuff in there as well. There was a lot of stuff I really didn't like. Thor: Love and Thunder, one of my least favourite Marvel movies ever. Moon Knight, very, very controversial take, didn't care for it. So I think all of us kind of have our own idea of what the MCU is, where it should be going, where it should be at this stage, and I feel like we are all kind of gravitating towards these different franchises, these different properties, and maybe that's kind of the point of this, because there is just such a vast universe of stuff right now. For the average cinema goer, the average movie, television watcher, there's just a wealth of content they can pick from. I have to watch all of it and just kind of go between. But for those of us who watch and consume every single piece of media that Marvel puts out, whether it be a movie or a television show, there is a lot going on at the moment. So Phase 5 is the phase that is supposed to kind of bring everything together and start to show us kind of a clear narrative path forward going into this next arc, which I believe is called the Multiverse arc, where the big bad is going to be Kang the Conqueror. I gotta say, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, not the best start for this new phase. Now, I've been really looking forward to this movie. The Ant-Man movies are, well, particularly the first Ant-Man movie is one of my favourite Marvel films. I think it's just so great. Second one never really held up for me after the first viewing, but I love that first movie. I love Paul Rudd's portrayal of Ant-Man. I think he's great. That guy can do no wrong in my eyes. I love him, I think he's awesome. And the Ant-Man and the Wasp comics, when we're talking like classic comics from the 60s, are my absolute favourites. I would read them over anything else, any day of the week. I think they're just so fun and so over the top and vibrant and goofy. So this movie I was very excited for, but it just did not work for me on various fronts. Now, one big thing I will give this movie, and this is a major plus, a major takeaway for me, is that yes, I think we do finally see where we're going narratively with this next phase, or this next saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We finally have this point where we're going, all right, this is where we're going. Particularly in the introduction of Kang. I know we sort of had a very brief introduction to him in Loki, the season finale of Loki. Of course, Jonathan Majors is playing Kang the Conqueror, and he is absolutely incredible. He's fantastic. So we have the introduction to Kang. We get a little bit of a backstory to his character, a bit of build-up. We get really great foresight. We get some great hints of what might be to come. The problem that I had with this movie, and this is like the major problem I had with this movie, and a major problem I had with Phase 4 of the MCU, is that Marvel is introducing us to the multiverse for about the 6th time. It's almost like Marvel thinks its audience is so dumb that they have to have this multiverse concept drilled into them constantly. We've been introduced to the multiverse in Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, WandaVision, Loki, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and now Ant-Man and the Wasp. And every time Marvel does this, they introduce the multiverse. It's a whole bunch of expository dialogue and a whole bunch of like flashbacks and character building and stuff, showing us what the multiverse is as if they haven't already done it before. And I think it's just the strangest thing is that perhaps they think that this concept is so wild and so wacky when in fact it really is such a simple premise. I think maybe Marvel realizes even that they have so many properties at the moment. There's so many movies, there's so many series. And from the beginning, not everyone, let's face the facts, these are the facts, that not every single member of the general audience watches every single piece of content that comes from the MCU. That is just straight up fact. When you look at box office numbers, when you look at the performance of the shows on Disney Plus and all that, there is not a 100% audience that is watching every single thing. But it also feels like they've finally realized their universe, their franchise is so vast that they have to introduce this concept so many times so that it actually reaches every single corner of the general audience that is watching these movies. Because this is, look, it is a concept that we need to understand as an audience going forward into this next phase. And as much of the audience that kind of gets an introduction to the multiverse, the better. I get that. Problem with that is that those of us who are watching everything that Marvel puts out are seeing this introduction to the multiverse over and over and over again. And right now, it feels to me like, get on with it. But I feel like this movie, overall, just really not a lot happens. I mean, a lot happens in this movie. This is like a huge, overblown extravaganza of a film where so much stuff happens, but not much really of substance happens at all. This movie really stylistically didn't work for me either. It felt very much in the mold of like Taika Waititi Thor. I really did not like Thor Love and Thunder. I thought it was like really over the top, especially with the humor. The humor did, for the first time, for me anyway, feel really, really forced. And almost feels like the creative team behind Ant-Man and the Wasp, or, you know, probably just the Marvel Studios creative team have gone, man, we love what Taika did. Let's like make this the MCU going forward. There's a lot of like really crazy, wacky characters in here. A lot of over-the-top, stupid, dumb comedy that just doesn't land. It is just so dumb. Unfortunately, my theater, my audience that I was in, was laughing uncontrollably at stuff that was not intended to be funny, or was laughing uncontrollably at jokes that were meant to be funny, but not laughing because they were funny, laughing because they were just really bad. This is a dumb movie. So much dumb stuff thrown into this that you kind of look at it and think, what are they doing? How have we got to this point? And look, I understand Ant-Man and the Wasp, they're not the most serious of, you know, comic book characters. Those early comics, as I said earlier, were so damn goofy. And that's what I loved about those comics. And this movie almost feels like the most comic book movie we have from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the way that it's introducing all these really weird comic-y characters, these weird comic-y concepts. I'm not going to spoil it. They do some stuff with the ants that, you know, was a big part of the comics, but when you bring it into this world that we've developed, like a grounded world, it almost feels just too far-fetched to accept at this point, so far down the line. I'd be interested to see what other people kind of to think of this stuff. We've got the introduction of MODOK here. Really crazy, over-the-top, wild, wacky character, and I hated him. Granted, I've never really liked him in the comics, but this was just a character that I just didn't like. He didn't need to be there. He served no purpose. And the build-up of him, the reveal of him, all this stuff was just really dumb, and the audience just wasn't buying into it. But the other thing is this movie tries to do some really serious stuff, particularly with Kang. The scenes with him are really intense and really, really full on. It goes to a really dark place, this movie. And look, I have defended the use of like this kind of 60s over the top, you know, wacky style in the MCU over, you know, the past. But it feels too much here. And it's the same thing that they did with Love and Thunder. It just feels too much, and it feels kind of a little bit out of place. I know it sounds so dumb saying this about a movie about Ant-Man, of all things, but right here it just feels too much. There is too much of a stark contrast between the narrative and the tone in this movie that it just doesn't work. I always like to bring a positive spin to these, and there are a few positives to come out of this. Again, as I said, I do feel like genuinely we have got a direction that we are perhaps going forward, and that does relax me a little bit. That makes me feel a little bit better about this franchise going forward. This franchise that I just love so deeply and I just want to see do so well. We've also got as I said, the introduction of Jonathan Majors as Kang in a big theatrical setting anyway. And man, he's damn good. Jonathan Majors is a terrific performer, and his performance as Kang is the standout in this film. He is ruthless. He is menacing, he is frightening. There's a couple of really, really intense scenes with him, and he is just leagues above everyone else in this film. He is terrific, and I'm so excited to see what they do with Kang going forward, and I can't wait to the point where we can get to maybe even if it is the next Avengers films in 3 or 4 years' time, or however long away they are. Even if it takes that long to get to a point where we're actually getting a really dark, deep, serious story with Kang, I can't wait for it. I'm just so excited to see what happens with this character. There were a few moments that I enjoyed. The action is great in this, as it always is. It does have a tendency to be too over the top and too extravagant at times, where there's just so much CGI and special effects and stuff going on that you just kind of lose track of what is happening. But look, the action stuff is great. The choreography is fantastic as always. There is some really cool conceptual stuff that comes out of it, whether that's from the multiverse concept or just anything else that they've thrown into this movie. There is some really cool, genuinely cool stuff being thrown into this that we perhaps haven't seen in the MCU before, and I'd like to see them do more with. Again, sorry I'm speaking so generally. I'm trying not to give out spoilers and stuff. Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, they're all great, as always. Don't really need to say much more about them. They're on form as normal, but they do really just get overshadowed by Jonathan Majors as Kang. Catherine Newton is here playing Cassie Lang for the first time, and she's great. I felt like she was maybe underutilized a little bit. I feel like they didn't do as much with her as they could have done, but there is, again, future potential for her, and I'm really, really excited to see what they do with her character going forward. It's very clear that Marvel is heading towards some sort of Young Avengers thing, or even, you know, refreshing the Avengers lineup with a lot of young faces, and I think Catherine Newton's going to fit into that very well. She is very good here, and again, really excited to see what they do with Cassie Lang going forward. At that, I'm just really, really disappointed that I didn't love this movie. I was really hoping to, but it just, at the end of the day, for me anyway, it wasn't for me. I really do hope that the audience embraces this. I have just, again, as someone who has been watching all of these movies for like 15 years, I consumed like 30 odd movies and series. It's probably more than that by now. I just want more movement. I just want to get to the next point of the franchise. I'm loving the introductions to new characters, but I feel like I want to move forward. I want to feel like we're getting some momentum, and Phase 5 is definitely the place to do it as we head towards Avengers, Kang Dynasty, and Secret Wars, and all of that stuff. I just want some momentum. I have some faith that Marvel can do something really spectacular with the next wave of films, but I also feel like my hand has been bitten far too many times by mediocre movies over the last couple of years, perhaps even beyond mediocre movies that I've just really not liked at all. So unfortunately at that, I will be giving Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania a 2.5 out of 5. And at that, I'm throwing it over to you. I want to know your thoughts on Quantumania. If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it just yet, what are you feeling going into this one? As always, join the conversation down in the comments below. Until next time, take it easy. I'll see you then.